Good morning everyone. In this tutorial we will see how to apply the macros provided by default from Magic Automa for DaVinci Resolve. In the various containers there are already many macros, for example. In order to make you want to create infinite personalized macros. In fact, these are the ones provided by default, but you can make infinite macros to your liking. Simply by going with the right button, create a new macro with the wizard and choose all the types of macros possible. But in this tutorial we are going to see how to apply these macros. Let's start from the first container. We open Resolve, we select a clip. This clip we can see that it is already at 50%, we imagine that we want to apply a speed of 25%. We select the clip, we click here, it goes to see that it opens the window and the 25% is applied because we have selected this macro of 25%. We apply the 50, you see. It is selected and the 50 is applied, speed 100, you see, so I applied speed 50. Speed 25 and speed 100. You have seen that here it says ripple. What does ripple mean? That when I run this macro, the ripple timeline is also selected, so it means that every time I apply this macro, the ripple timeline is also selected. It means that the clips on the right shift to the right. But if we wanted to apply a speed of 50% with the optical flow, how do we do it? Simple. We select the clip, we click, you see, the 50% is applied, then the optical flow panel is opened. The retome and scaling, and the optical flow has been applied. Clearly I can create a speed macro. For example, that makes the combination of all these parameters. The change rate, the ripple timeline, the freeze, the pitch, the change, the keyframe, and then later, as in this macro. You see, apply the optical flow. A macro, a simple macro, can be made up of infinite sub-macros. So I applied the speed of 50% and then later I said go and apply also the optical flow. We continue our tour, we have seen the speed, we can continue with the speed. We apply 25% and the change of the optical flow, okay? 25% and optical flow. Let's go to apply a similarity stabilizer on this clip. We click, you see, the stabilization panel is opened. Everything is reset and it is set to similarity. Let's go to, you see the orange color we have now, we want this clip to be green, we select, automatically it has been set to green. We want it yellow, you have seen. Now let's look at this macro, what does it do? Cropping 235. You see, here I don't have the cropping, I click here, the cropping panel is opened. And it is put the black bars above and below. This panel has practically been opened. It has been put a crop of 128 above and below, and so we have this effect. What does it do? Duration 3 seconds, it makes the duration of the clip, which at the moment is 36 seconds, make it 3 seconds. Let's see, 3 seconds. Okay, 5 seconds, you have seen, let's see how long it lasts, 5 seconds. These two macros apply a change in the duration of the clip. If I wanted the next 10 clips to 5 seconds. Just launch the cycle and tell it to apply this macro, the last macro, this one, to the next 10 clips. Let's close. Here there is a macro that simply applies the optical flow to a clip, you see. I click and the optical flow is applied. Here there is a macro that applies the stabilizer, but in perspective mode. You see, as before, I open the panel and click on Stabilize and the stabilizer is applied in perspective mode. This macro, cut clip, what does it do? It cuts on this clip a second in input and a second in output. I click, you see, it cut a second in input and a second in output. This, for example, is one of the macros that uses keyboard shortcuts. So I invite you to go and see the tutorial for setting up the keyboard. Search color and border. This does nothing but go and look for the color and border effect, but it looks for it alone. While this one applies it, this one looks for it alone. Let's try. I have selected the clip, you see. The colored border has been found, but if we wanted to apply it, we always select the clip, we click on Apply. Colored border, the search is done as before, but this time the colored border effect has also been applied. Let's look again. We delete the color and border, we delete everything, here it is all empty. We select the clip again, we delete this, we close in a normal condition, apply colored border. You have seen that the colored border has been applied to this clip. Clearly this is just an example. You can search and apply any effect you have in this effect palette. Let's go to the second tab. Color, here we have apply color and you see the effect for 3 seconds, so what do? I select the clip, I click on Apply LUT and select for 3 seconds, here it is. You have seen what this macro has done. It has looked for the LUT, it has applied it on a new node, it has created a new node. It has applied the LUT and it has shown the effect of the LUT on this clip. Let's go to see the next macro. What does it do? LUT Blackmagic, this one applies another LUT. You see that the LUT is being looked for and applied to another node. As the tab says, these are the macros that act on the color page, node plus auto color for example. I click on this macro. What happens? A new node is created and the auto color is applied. You have seen, new node and auto color. Next macro, this macro has an effect both on the edit page and on the color page, so what does this macro do? It applies a 30% speed change, it applies the optical flow and then it applies the auto color in the color page. We apply, you see, speed 30, then optical flow. We go to the color page and the auto color is applied, all this, all in automatic mode. Speed 30 plus optical flow, plus stabilize plus auto color, more and more difficult. We select another clip, here this one, let's see, speed 30, optical flow, stabilize and in the end auto color. This macro applies, the word itself says it, it opens the color primaries panel, the color wheels and you have seen. It is changing some parameters, it automatically opened the primaries, color wheels and applied. Change the contrast, the pivot and the color boost. Let's go and click on this macro, color motion effects. What does this macro do? It opens the motion effect and applies the parameters that we have. Established, OK? This macro simply adds a serial node, as you have seen. This other macro simply opens the nodes. For example, if the nodes are closed, they are opened by this macro. All macros and all commands must not be seen as a single macro, but an infinite possibility to create macros. Color clip simply changes the color of the clip in the timeline. I select the clip, olive, pink. Clip down and clip up. What does it do? Let's click. You see it changes the position towards the bottom of the clip. And clip up does the same thing, but on the contrary, it brings the clip up. This may seem useless, this macro. But for those very useful who use format 235, it is, because it centers a clip towards the top, towards the bottom. Let's click here, the DSLR filter. Practically goes to look for the DSLR filter and applies it to the clip. We have seen this, speed 50, speed 25, speed 100. This macro applies a filter, flicker. This macro simply opens only, simply goes to look for this, the deflicker. This macro opens the project settings. This macro opens or closes the inspector. In our case, we close it first and then reopen it. These two macros open the media pool folders and clip, so in the case you are making a complex macro, that you need the media pool folder or the media pool clip, the content of this macro is what you need. Then we have dynamic zoom. It practically applies this panel to the macro. Let's see. Select the macro, click on dynamic zoom and see that from this moment. Dynamic zoom is applied to the clip. Here we have a macro lens correction that goes to act on this panel here. We have the macro composite burn that does nothing but open this panel and select color burn. Let's see, you have seen, color burn is applied. We can also go and change the opacity within the macro. Transform zoom, let's go and apply this macro. You have seen it has been made a 1.26 zoom. Dissolve in and dissolve out. What do these macros do? When you are in condition to want to do a dissolution in this way, you can do it automatically. Click on this handle, click, it turns red and click on dissolve in. You have seen that the dissolution is done automatically. What is the convenience is that here are specified how many frames the cursor must go forward. If we do it by hand, it is never precise as when it is done with this macro. Same thing in output, I select the cursor, I do dissolve out. And you have seen that a dissolution has been made automatically in output. If I click on decrease audio 1 dB, you see that the audio level is reduced by 1 dB, by 1 dB, by 2, -3. Now I click this -3 and it comes to -6. Reverse operation increase practically increases, you see, 4, 3. From 3 dB we go from -3 to 0, here it is. Normalizes, it opens the normalization panel, where then we go to set the parameters. We select the point where we want it to be applied the audio transition. We click and you see that the transition is searched and it is applied by dragging the mouse. We repeat, we have clicked on the point, we have selected the macro and the effect is dragged on the last point where we clicked. Audio fade in, what does it do? Where I put the cursor here for example, I click audio fade in 20, what happens? Practically the volume is lowered in input. Same thing for output. I put the cursor here, from this point onwards at the end of the clip it must decrease. Let's see, we click. Here you have seen that a keyframe is put here up to 0. After having seen the audio fade in and audio fade out, let's see audio fade portion, what does it do? Let's pretend that there is a clip here with audio, so I do in output, I want a dissolve to be made to make the audio of this clip heard above. So I did in an output, I click on audio fade portion -3. Let's see what it does. If we go to C, if we go to enlarge what it has done, it has practically made a descent and a climb in order to make the audio of this other clip heard. Audio keyframe -3 does nothing but set a keyframe where the cursor is positioned with a certain value, so I click here. We can look in the inspector, it has created a keyframe with value -3. What does this last macro do? We select the clip, click on the macro and let's see what this macro does. Look, it has put a climb and a descent audio from 0 to the level of the audio of a second. As specified in the macro. Let's go see another tab, timeline. This macro simply makes a find clip in media pool. We have selected this clip, let's go see, here it is. Retime control opens the retime control of the speed change. Then if we do in and out here we have a go to in, go to out. Here we can apply a mirror, it is nothing more than an opening of the transform that makes a flip horizontally. This passes to the next clip and this macro passes to the previous clip. This macro brings the cursor to the first frame and this macro brings the cursor to the last frame. If we have marked in and out, mark reset in, you see it is cleaned and brought to 0, mark reset out. These macros of this tab are an example of how we can take advantage of all the Resolve shortcut. In fact, if we go see, for example, this macro as it is done. It is nothing more than a shortcut macro that goes to recall the shortcut clip, find clip in media pool. This type of shortcut command we will see in a specific tutorial. Let's go to script. These 4 macros are examples of scripts. Let's remember that there is a specific tutorial to enable scripts. And scripts can only work on DaVinci Resolve Studio. They are based on a programming language called Python, and therefore the Python must be installed. Here I have inserted various tests to understand if Python is installed or not. If I do it on my machine, you see that it is installed and the project name returns to me. For example, here I select the clip and click on Hello World. It is nothing more than an information received through the script Python. If Python is not installed, you will have a message error. Here we can export the current project, it is always a Python script. Clicking here it is exported, you have seen quickly, the current project in a certain position that we have established here. For example in Python. We will also see this in a Python section. We have the timer. The timers are nothing more than internal Magic Automa tools where we can do operations in time. For example, every 5 minutes I want to do an operation, I use the timer type commands. Let's see, various. In various there are always examples of macro. Of simple macro things, but that can be used in a context of a complex macro composed of several operations. Here we have transport key, which are practically the various operations that we can do on the timeline. Go to the beginning, go to the end. Set a point of in, rewind, etc. In the tablet tab, we have all the macros that we will see on the tablet when we enable the external tablet. All these macros are visible on the tablet. If you want to add a macro on the tablet like this, right-click, View on Tablet, yes. From this moment the macro cropping is visible on the tablet. If I wanted to delete it, how do I do it? I do right-click, Delete Macro, yes, it is deleted from the tablet, but not from the original container. For this overview of the already existing macros, we have finished. I invite you to write to me for any questions in the email that you will find in the information of the video. Thanks.